Broadcasting.
Okay,
There we
good.
go. We got it. All right, finally. So, all right, Professor Galloway. Let's say, of course, I read the we read the bio. I'm going to tell us the class about this, but of course, this is Professor Dennis Galloway, a 30 years veteran in the sports production field, an Emmy Award winning director. Say he was also a professor of mine and one of my greatest influences. I say get right into it. So, Professor Galloway, how did you get started in this field? So, of course, you have 30 years of experience. How does one get started in this kind of field?
Well, it was a different world when I got started back in actually 1978 was my first year working in the industry. And it was different in that there were not as many options that you have right now. In fact, cable TV itself was relatively new to my area in Pittsburgh. I majored in communications at, you'll like this, California University of Pennsylvania. It's a school that's about 40 miles south of Pittsburgh. And I knew I wanted to work in the television industry. And as I mentioned, cable was relatively new. It was actually just starting up in Pittsburgh. And there was a forum to kind of teach the citizens about cable TV. I was just out of college, wasn't actually ready to start with my job with work as of yet. And I contacted the people and let them know that, hey, if you like, maybe I can come down and volunteer some time to help with the forum and all that. And they contacted me back and said, no, not really. We don't need your help. But if we know of any jobs that are out there, we'll let you know. Well, a couple of weeks later, I got a call from them. There was a position open with the CBS affiliate in Pittsburgh called KDK TV. And at the time, television stations did a lot of local production. That's not the case now because stations are basically buying syndicated programming or they're sticking with their network programming. They didn't do a lot of local production. But this station did a lot of local production, and they were looking for somebody to work as a field producer, somebody to produce some of the stories on there. Well, I knew I wasn't really qualified, wasn't the person they were looking for, but I figured maybe I'll just go through the interview process and see what goes on. So I went through the interview process, and it was determined by them that, I wasn't the person that they were looking for, but they liked me enough. They liked the drive that I had, the interest that I had enough that they said, well, hey, the money that we have for this position, we'll use to hire you as a production assistant while we're looking for our person that we're looking for. That turned out to be about 2 weeks. They found somebody and they were about to let me go, but just then another one of their story producers quit. So I got to extend it. So I got to work as a production assistant, got to help produce some of their feature stories. And it was really, really a great experience for me. Well, after that, I started looking for more work, and really all I knew at the time was television stations. I didn't know anything else. So I started, contact stations and networks actually around the country. Didn't have any luck. But then there was an article about a vice president of a production company in Pittsburgh. And at the time, I didn't know anything about production companies. Wrote the guy a letter, said that, hey, we'll give you, he contacted me back and said, we can give you some work on a freelance basis. Figured, okay, well, maybe I'll try freelancing for a year, see how that goes. Well, that 1 year of freelancing turned into 30 years of freelancing. I started out more, on the lower end of the production end, working on as a production assistant, working my way up through the food chain. I was working on commercials, on corporate presentations, and they were recommending me to other clients. So I started to get more and more work. And slowly but surely, I started falling into sports production. And I saw that I took a liking to that and had a talent for that, and worked my way up through the food chain. And I eventually started directing shows and ended up directing Major League Baseball telecasts for about 25 years.
So, of course, with all this, could you say that it's of course, it's not easy getting into the business, as you just stated, all the things you had to do, all the people you had to meet. Is it more of a maybe who you know basis when it's getting a job in the sports production or maybe just video production field in general?
Well, it's a combination of a lot of things. It's, who you know obviously helps out quite a bit, and also how you sell yourself. For instance, as I mentioned, with the job with KDK, where I knew that I was not qualified. At the end of the interview, they were finished asking the questions, and they said, well, is there anything else that you would like to tell us? Well, when I was an undergrad in college, I was the student representative on our board of trustees. And as they asked that question, is there anything more that you want to tell us? I said, well, I was on the other side of the table during this process before, because I was on the search committee for the president of our college. And I, asked them questions regarding the position. And actually, as a member of the board of trustees, I was, responsible for decisions for a multi-million-dollar budget. And I just went on and on about my duties there, and they could see that those duties, those things that I did, could apply to what they needed. So it's not just what you do, with your school, with your coursework, which is obviously very important, but other things to make you a more well-rounded person. And also, as I mentioned, your ability to market yourself. That's very important.
Okay, so I can imagine courses dedicated to what we do were much different when you went to Cal UP. But how important would you say, maybe at least now, of course you're a professor, how important is it now to just kind of get the experience in college? Because of course everybody wants to see what I've seen for resumes, they want the good resume, but they also want people who have this many years experience, but you can get that same experience in college. So how important is that for a student who want to get into this field to get that experience in college?
Hands-on experience is very important. Also, obviously, your coursework is very important, because that makes you a more well-rounded person. When you get out of college, you don't really know where you're going to be in 10 years. But that base knowledge that you have in college is very important. And the ability to do any type of production work. Like, let's say if you wanted to work, in film, but there's a sports production that needs somebody to assist on that. That's really important. That well-rounded experience just makes you more marketable, makes you a better person, makes it easier for you to get a job, makes you stand out, let's say, among some of the other people as well.
Cool. Say switch the games a little bit. Who influences you in your career? Like as a director, or maybe as a professor? Like who influenced you in your path of career?
I always tell people that find a mentor. Once you're out there in the business and there's somebody that, has been in the business for a while and is able to offer you some assistance in any way, find that mentor, attach yourself to them, tap them for a wealth of knowledge. When I first, early in my career, a lot of the work that I did was corporate work, working for corporations like PPG Industries, Westinghouse International, Rockwell International, Exxon. And these corporations all have within them their own corporate communications departments. There was a gentleman that was an executive with PPG Industries who was my direct supervisor, who just took me aside and really gave me a lot of tools mentally to work my way through the business. When I knew that I wanted to, when I was working in sports, and I knew that I wanted to eventually do some directing, especially directing Major League Baseball, my key mentor there was a guy by the name of Billy Webb. He directed New York Mets baseball for decades. He also was the lead director for Fox Sports. He directed, I think, 17 World Series, several All-Star games, and the like. I made it known to him and also to others in the industry what my desired goals were. And Billy took me aside whenever he would come into Pittsburgh to work a Mets telecast. Before the telecast, I'd sit down with him with a pad and paper and just grill him questions. Where do you set your cameras up? How do you use them? What do you do in certain situations? And he was really open, very, very helpful to me throughout my career. And I've tried to do the same from my end, mentoring others. Somebody's looking for assistance, somebody's looking for information, try to pass that along. So it's like a circle that's going on where you're helped by somebody, you help somebody else, and it goes on and on like that.
Cool. I say, when it comes to like everything that you've done, what has probably, because of course you specialize in sports production. Maybe the thing I want to ask is that is it easier doing sports or news or just regular video? Like you said, you did corporate.
Well, they all have their own challenges. I can't speak a lot to news because I've been around news production, but haven't really done much of it. But from my standpoint, it all depends upon the individual, what they prefer to do. I could not have seen myself directing news, the same show 5 nights a week for years to come. When I was doing the sports production, I was traveling around the country, doing different sports from season to season, going to different venues all around the country. And that's something that I really enjoyed. I'm not trying to knock news or anything like that, but that just was not right for me. I enjoyed doing the corporate productions. We did a lot of single camera productions with scripts. We shot our B-roll, shot our interviews, edited the production as well, which I enjoy. But myself personally, I enjoy the aspects of live television where you have to get it right the first time, every time. You're covering the action as it goes, and you're telling a story. You're not just covering a football game, covering a baseball game. You're telling the story of that game. You're giving the viewers important information, giving the viewers a reason why they should be watching, game X, Y, and Z. So I enjoyed those aspects of it.
I'm just saying, of course, I'm pretty sure my class, because I'm gonna tell my class about some of the examples of what you've covered. Because I remember you explained that you covered the Masters, World Series. Can you talk about what maybe event that really that sticks in your mind the most? Like, what was your favorite event that you've ever?
Well, let me just back up a little bit. I knew of people that worked golf. I never worked golf myself, but I knew of people that worked golf, and I knew people that worked the World Series. What I did mostly is, I directed regular season games for the Pittsburgh Pirates, for 23 years, directed the Baltimore Orioles for a couple of years. And in addition to that, all kinds of college football, college baseball, basketball, things like that. A couple of events that really stood out for me. When I was directing the Pirates telecast, initially they were just absolutely terrible.
Mm-hmm.
But then they hired a manager, Jim Leland, who changed the culture of the team, and slowly but surely they started to climb up. They started to become a good team, and 1990 was the first of 3 seasons where they won their division in a row. And that first time that they clinched the division, we were in St. Louis, and it was just a really, really memorable telecast. To being a part of the team and from the periphery and seeing them achieve a goal like that, it was really, really special. Another really special telecast of mine, 2001. 9/11 had happened. Baseball had ceased for, I think, about 10 days or so. And one of our first road telecasts when baseball resumed was in New York City.
Right.
And the professionalism of the crew under those dire circumstances, the bulk of the crew that we used was from the New York City area. And, prior to the actually going on the air, hearing the stories of these people talking about, losing friends, about one gentleman who was shooting some single camera stuff in that area, and he would hear this thud on the ground. And it was of people jumping out of the building, jumping out of the towers and landing on the ground. But, in spite of these really, really difficult, challenging circumstances, and also the magnitude of the telecast itself, the professionalism of the crew during that time was just an absolutely perfect telecast.
That's pretty powerful. Of course, I didn't have too many questions, but when you have students who maybe want some advice on how to conduct themselves when it gets to graduation and maybe where their career path should follow, what kind of advice do you have for students who want to get into the field production field, but maybe not necessarily have that kind of experience yet?
Conduct yourself in a professional manner. We have some productions at my current institution, Southern Illinois University, where we're actually doing some shows that air on ESPN3. I emphasize professionalism. Show up on time, show up ready to go. Take charge of your position in that, the duties. Don't wait for somebody to tell you what to do. If you know what you're supposed to do, get it done. get to, take care of what you're supposed to do. Same thing whenever it's, like time for a job interview. Be professional with that. Show up on time. Dress properly. Your resume in order. There was a woman who I was working with on a show in West Virginia, knew that I knew some people with ESPN, and she asked for the contact information and wanted to send a resume to them. She did. Couple of weeks later, she called, contacted me. Well, I haven't heard anything from them. What's going on? I contacted my friend. He actually sent me her resume. Graphically, it looked good, but there was grammatical errors, errors in spelling. It was just really, really awful. But you have to present yourself in a professional manner and have confidence too. Yep. Confidence in yourself, confidence in your ability. One thing that I always tell people when they are in an interview situation, the interviewer will always ask you questions about yourself and about your background. They will then generally end the interview with, do you have any questions for us? Everybody wants to know, well, how much am I going to get paid? Something like that. Don't ask that. Most important question I tell them to ask, describe for me the ideal candidate for this position. They then start to describe the qualities that they're looking for. Then you, as the candidate, will come back. Well, hey, I think I'm the ideal person for that position because of, going back to some of the things that they have said. So those are important things that you need to do. Have confidence in yourself, confidence in your abilities, and present yourself in a professional way.
Awesome. I'll say something that just popped out. I wrote it down. How important is it that students get to know everything? Like for here at UFTV, most of us older guys, like I'm the vice president now of UFTV. I forgot to mention that. Mm-hmm. We know how to work the switcher. We direct all the shows, camera work, of course, graphics. How important is it to know almost everything to be successful, to be someone in your position?
Okay, one thing that made me a good multi-camera live sports director is me coming up through the food chain and working different positions. That made me, as a director, I knew what people can do. I knew what equipment can do. So I'm not asking them to do things that it just can't be done. I've worked side by side with producers who have not come up properly through the chain, and they are yelling and screaming and berating people. And it's basically because they don't know what people and equipment can do. Mm-hmm. So it's really important to become the best that you can be at any of your positions, to know what others can do. Back when I was playing football, I was an offensive lineman, but I knew for every play, what the running back's supposed to be doing, what the tight end's supposed to be doing. Knowing what everybody else is able to do just helps make things work better.
Awesome. So, well, Professor Galloway, you answered all my questions to a T. I'm trying to think of anything else I can possibly ask you. But is there anything that you already haven't told me? I used to go there. But hey, I appreciate you. I always appreciated what you taught me. You're one of my biggest influence. I tell people all the time, Professor Galloway was this. I always talk about that's why I told my mom I was interviewing. She's like, oh, I remember him. Like,
oh wow, okay.
Of course, remember I told you my grandmother still lives in Pittsburgh, so I visit her quite often. So. Mm-hmm. Of course. I'm gonna make sure to stay in touch, of course.
Oh yeah, please, yeah. And then when it's time, for you to go out and look for a job, keep me apprised of what's going on. I'd love to hear what you're doing.
Of course. And I also wanted to send you my resume so you can.
Yeah, please. Okay.
And if there's anybody who who can you can push it to, that would be greatly appreciated. But
yeah, send me that, and then I'll send you a couple of links for a couple of sites to check out.
Awesome.
For possible employment, okay?
Awesome. Well, thank you again, Professor Galloway. It's good talking to you. Good seeing you.
All right. You as well. And definitely keep in touch.
Of course. Say thanks for helping me out with this. I'll stay in touch. I will definitely speak with you soon.
All right. Take care. All right. Bye now.